Welcome back. The first bilateral public talks between the US and Iran in almost 30 years were held in May. Both countries agreed that a secure and stable Iraq was in both their interests. US envoy Ryan Crocker said his Iranian counterpart had rejected the charges that Iran is arming Shia militia groups, allegedly led by the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, while the Iranian side made the assertion that the coalition presence in Iraq was an occupation and that the effort to train and equip the Iraqi security forces had been inadequate to the challenges faced. The second round in late July was more controversial. The two countries engaged in heated exchanges as the US ambassador to Baghdad accused Tehran of intensifying violence against its military. Well, those meetings produced little results. Can 2008 provide a breakthrough in the relations between the two countries? Well, joining us again are our guests in Doha, Edmund Gharib, Professor of International Relations at Georgetown University, Hassan Nafi, also in Doha, Professor of Political Science at Cairo University and the Secretary General of the Arab Thought Forum, and in Tehran, Sadiq Zibakalam, Professor of Political Science at Tehran University. Mr. Gharib, I've got a quote from Columbia University Professor Gary Sick, who says, since the Bush administration removed, at least temporarily, Iran's most dangerous enemy to the east, the Taliban in Afghanistan, wiped out its most dangerous enemy in the west, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and installed a sympathetic Shia government in Baghdad, Iran has almost inevitably emerged as a much more powerful player. Mr. Nafi also touched upon that a little bit earlier on. It suggests that any strengthening of the Iranian regime in the last 5 or 6 years is the fault of the United States itself. Do you agree?
Well, during the last GCC summit, that there was a joke apparently that was reported in the media from some of the people attending that summit, which said more or less that the United States went to war against Afghanistan and Iran won. The United States went to war against Iraq and Iran won. So basically, as Mr. Sikh mentioned, there's no doubt that as a consequence of both wars, the position of Iran, the influence of Iran has been strengthened both within Iraq, and within Afghanistan, and in the region as a whole. And this is partly what has led, in a sense, to the increasing tensions that are taking place and the concerns, at least, of some of the Gulf states and the Arab states, especially some of the Sunni states, about the growing influence of Iran. So there is that fact to a certain extent that's affecting the situation and the relations between the countries in the region. Also, I think what has happened in Iraq, for example, one of the things that has led to the rise in the tension, sectarian tension, not only the way power was divided, the way power was shared. In fact, we saw the creation in Iraq, one of the more secular states in the Middle East. We saw the creation of an arrangement like Lebanon, the Lebanonization of Iraq, where political position posts were divided in accordance with sectarian affiliations, and that has contributed to that. In addition, the execution of Saddam Hussein perhaps may have given reflected this, that a lot of people in the region, the way that event occurred, also contributed to the sectarian tensions. And so as a result, we did see a heightening of the tensions on that level. But at the same time, I think it's very interesting that we might see also an improvement in relations. We see an opening for a deal, although it's important to remember that on the one hand, Washington now, we seem to be seeing both a carrot and a stick policy towards Iran. We heard from the intelligence agencies, the National Intelligence Estimate report, that Iran is a rational player. It's not it takes into account the chances of victory and defeat. And this is something very different from what we had heard earlier, that the Iranian regime was an extremist regime, was an irrational regime. But at the same time, we also heard that Iran did not give the information, did not tell the International Atomic Energy Agency all the information it had, and also that Iran is continuing to enrich uranium, and that, in fact, unless that problem is solved, we're going to continue to see problems.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt you. Yes, Iran does say that the Bushehr nuclear power station will start working in mid-2008, and I'm sure that will be raising eyebrows in Washington. Mr. Zibakalam, the United States is not the only country with elections coming up in 2008. There are parliamentary elections coming up in Iran in March. How significant is that, and how closely will the US be watching these parliamentary elections in Iran?
Well, I think the election in March would be very significant, not only for Iranians, but it would be also of interest within the region, and also for the future of any breakthrough in Tehran and Washington relation. Now, first of all, if the turnout in the election would be very high, as the Islamic regime in Tehran would hope that be the case, then it would actually provide the Islamic regime in Tehran with an air of legitimacy. So it can turn back and tell the United States that the Iranian on the whole are backing me over the nuclear issue, over my policy in Iraq, over my policy in towards Lebanon. But let me just go back to what we were discussing earlier on, the accusation coming from the United States that Iran is an extremist regime. About more than 10 years ago, Iranian elected in 1997, Iranian elected a very mild person for the president. 20 million Iranians voted for Mr. Khatami, and he was a reformist. And what did the United States do? Nothing. The United States is still carrying on, opposing, even when we have a mild and democratic elected government.
All right, point taken. I want to move on a little bit. Sorry to interrupt you. Mr. Nafi, Iran and China have a rapidly growing friendship and relationship. Iran and Russia as well. Iran and much of Latin America. How worrying is this for Washington, and what are the global implications of these alliances?
As a matter of fact, Iran has been playing its cards in a much more smarter way than the United States. The United States image is eroding. I think it is a bad image all over the world, and unless the United States change its policy, its global policy and also its regional policy, I don't think that there will be any rapprochement between the United States and Iran. And also the United States is facing a lot of problems, not only with Iran, but with most of the world. I would like just to notice here that Iran also is opening up with many other Arab countries, including Egypt. I think we can see now, despite all the heated American-Iranian relations, there is a rapprochement between Egypt and Iran, and between Iran and most of the Arab world.
Yes, that might be, I'm sorry to interrupt you, that might be an interesting prospect. Iran and some of the other Sunni Arab states in the region, a different sort of relationship with them. There's about a minute and a half left on the program. Mr. Gharib, if I could come to you for your final thoughts regarding proxy war. Many people saw the Israeli-Hezbollah war in the summer of 2006 as the first proxy Iran-US war. If these two don't directly go to war with each other, do you foresee maybe some more proxy wars between the two in the future?
Well, there are limited areas where this could take place, but there's no doubt that there is that aspect. Part of the problem, as we heard earlier, between the United States and Iran, it's not only the nuclear issue, although that's a real issue, at least from the perspective of Washington, but there is the issue of Hezbollah, there is the issue of the situation in Iraq, the support for certain militias in Iraq, the support also for elements that are hostile to the United States in Afghanistan, the growing regional influence of Iran, to which the United States contributed. But I think a lot also depends. Iran is willing to deal with Washington, or at least that's the message that appears to be coming out. But if Iran, as we heard from our colleague in Tehran, if the United States is willing to recognize the Iranian regime, is not willing to oppose and overthrow the regime.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. Sorry for that. There's always so much to say, so little time. To our guests in Doha and Tehran, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. Bye-bye for now.